Building Men is brought to you by Finish the Race Apparel, FTRapparel.com, the creators of all things building men, and by Become Stronger Industries, become-stronger.com, the creators of handmade steel maces, hammers, and other badass equipment.
It is not about you. It is not about you looking good. It is not about you feeling like you've won, like the team is successful and your kid is a superstar. It has nothing to do with you. And the more you believe and make it about the way you feel, the harder it is on your kid.
You're listening to the Building Men podcast with Dennis and Anthony Miralda, brothers on a mission
to help you become the strongest version of yourself, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically.
What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Building Men podcast. I am your host, Dennis Miralda, and I am joined today by my man, Aaron Velky. Aaron is a keynote speaker. He is the CEO of the Money Club. He's a coach to entrepreneurs and leaders. He's the author of the book, Let Her Play, which was absolutely phenomenal. He sent me a copy of it. I read it cover to cover. As you know, I have 3 kids, 2 of them being females, and they are female athletes as well. So this was really interesting for me to read that book and to hear about Aaron and his journey. We connected in mid-July timeframe, and we had a conversation for about an hour, and I felt like I knew the dude for the last 10 years. That's how we connected immediately. So I'm really happy to have him on the show. Aaron, what is up, my man?
Everything is up, dude. That's a beautiful intro. Thank you for sharing that story.
Oh, absolutely. So how you been? You're out in Arizona, right? How has it been out there?
You know, this is I got here in June, and This time of year is where the weather starts to change. People start coming out. A lot of people leave Arizona for the summer, so people are starting to come out again. I'm 11 weeks into being a dad, so I'm starting to get a little rhythm, a little confidence.
Yes.
I've made a decent network here, and that's starting to flow. So I feel like I'm in a really cool swing right now. And after having been here for 90, 100 days, that is a very welcome feeling because I was very uprooted for a long time.
And summers in Arizona are no joke. Actually, I was out in Arizona in August of 2003. I went and I saw a couple of ball games. At the time, it was Bank One Ballpark where the Diamondbacks play. And I actually saw in back-to-back at-bats, Randy Johnson strike out Barry Bonds, and then Bonds went yard on Randy Johnson in back-to-back at-bats, which is really cool. So I was out there for a couple days in August, but it was like 108, and they say it's a dry heat. It was really hot. It was really, really hot out there.
You know, coming from the East Coast where humidity is like our lifeblood, it's probably easier to come here. It's lighter, it's more buoyant. However, I have mistakenly taken runs in the middle of the day thinking that it is a dry heat. Right. And it doesn't matter. And at 115, 111, 109 degrees, it matters. I got crushed on these runs. I had to walk my way home. I completely underestimated it. All that said, there's like 9 months of beautiful weather ahead.
So it's worth it.
And it's kind of like Groundhog Day, which I'm adjusting to. It's fall back there. I'm hearing from friends and they're like, oh, it's a beautiful fall day. There's a little sprinkle in the air. It's totally different. But it is a change that I feel very excited about as I kind of develop here and plant some roots.
What's a big difference that you've noticed? So you were in the Baltimore area. Is that?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. The biggest difference that you've noticed either it could be geographically or it could even be sociologically. Have you noticed any difference in the type of people, like anything that sticks out to you, and the difference from moving from East Coast out to the West Coast?
2. The first has been almost everyone that I've reached out to has said, I will happily meet with you and I will happily connect you to people that would serve you along your way. And I love Baltimore. Baltimore had a bit more resilience to that. Yeah. Baltimore was like, well, wait a minute, who are you and what do you want? And people here are just very open. And because it's a transient city, a lot of people feel what I'm feeling. They're like, hey, I remember being new here. I remember not having anyone. So let me help you out. That's the first. The second is that everything here for someone that has lived there their whole lives, everything's like 30 minutes away, and 30 minutes away seems really far. And coming from Baltimore, I'm like, 45 minutes was my average distance to visit my family and my brother. And like all these things were 45 minutes plus. So it all feels really, really small here in a way, between the way that the areas are all divided: Tempe, Scottsdale, Queen Creek. I'm learning all the names, Gilbert and Mesa. Like it's all really close. So for me, it feels like I've got access to all this. And for someone that's here, it sounds to me like it's really far.
Right.
And that's been a really exciting piece, because I've got this East Coast hustle, this grind, this grit, and I'm willing to work my tail off. And having 30-minute drives to get almost anywhere is really exciting, because it's actually a shortened distance.
And those are the things you appreciate when you're able to have those little clips of time where you can decompress a little bit. You can listen to a podcast, can listen to an audiobook, get your thoughts in order. When you have an hour and a half drive, or when you have a 2-minute drive, it's not the same. My first job was as an assistant principal. My commute was less than a mile. And I remember it was when my son was first born. He was 6 months old at the time. And I remember having a really stressful day at work, and then I was home. And I didn't have that time to like mentally prepare going from one role in the professional sense to the personal sense of being a father in that capacity. And then my next job, I had an hour and 20-minute drive, and it was too much. So that's a sweet spot. That 30-minute drive that's a good amount of time.
It is. Yeah. And look, being in a new city, you for as long as you want to adopt it, can have this starry-eyed, bright, bushy-tailed approach to new restaurants and new people. Yeah. And I really intend to maintain that for as long as possible. Hey, I'm new here, trying to build a network, really excited to meet you. How can I help? And the fun part of that in my book has always been, if you think of a network as a node system, reconnecting nodes. So when someone says, hey, I'm looking for this, as I'm going to meet people, I'm taking notes and saying, well, look, I just met 2 people that they don't know each other. And as a new person here, there's no more fun than, hey, I just met person A, person B, person A, meet person B.
Right.
And to add that value really quickly has been really, really enjoyable.
And interestingly enough, that's how we were connected, through Jamie Gruber. Reached out to both of us saying like, hey, there's some synergy here. You guys need to talk. And then you paid that forward. You introduced me to a couple different all boys schools that were working in some capacity, knowing what I was doing with Building Men and how that connection would benefit. So you're definitely walking the walk and talking the talk out there.
Dude, it's a lesson I've learned. I think of a network like a bank. You build your nodes, you add people to it, you meet people, you meet businesses, whatever it may be, but it's a bank. And I think too many people, kids, adults, business owners, entrepreneurs, they try to withdraw from an empty bank account way too quickly. So I'm big on deposit, connect people, add, serve, input, do what you've got to do, even if that's at a diminished return. Do what you've got to do to add value to the bank before you start asking for a big checkout. And that's been something I've done for 10 years, and it has been wildly successful.
Absolutely agree with that. And it's interesting because it's almost like interest. You don't even recognize that those things are happening behind the scenes, where you connect people together, and then 3, 6, 9 months down the road, they're like, you know what? I remember the conversation I had with Aaron. He's the perfect person to connect in another capacity. You don't even recognize that those little things that you're doing are providing compound interest for you in the future.
I love that. Love that definition. You know, it's part personal branding, part personal energy. And if you have a degree of like personal magnetism to you, a bit of charm, a bit of charisma in the way that you communicate, you can hold a conversation, you can ask good questions, and you can let someone else share, you're going to have a great conversation. And then to be able to point that attention to various different places is what makes value in the network. And, you know, I'm a big fan of coming to a new city for that reason. I usually don't change cities, but that's what I'm at now. Yeah. And I normally can do that from a lot of different perspectives online, but doing it in a new city, person to person, has already started to yield benefits, where someone will say, hey, I think you should meet Aaron because, and if you frame your brand and what you stand for and what you care about and what you do in a way that's open and inviting, and you add value to the bank, it's a much easier way to build a business, build a life, and build a community, in my opinion.
So you mentioned going out to a new city. So you're coming from the Baltimore area, and in Baltimore, it's like crab cakes, crab cakes and football. I'll pull up from Wedding Crashers. And when I think about Jersey, if someone's coming out to Jersey, I'll say like, you gotta go down the shore. You got to hit the boardwalk down the shore. You got to have a slice of pizza at a couple different spots. Grab a bagel in Jersey because they're better than anywhere else. And maybe some tomatoes. Blueberries are big in Jersey. So if I'm going out to your area and I'm saying to someone, hey, come out here, you either have to have this to eat, you have to go to this spot, or you have to go see this natural resource. What would you say I would want to do if I came out to Arizona?
Phenomenal hiking here. Badass tacos. I love tacos. So this is like a great spot to get tacos. Really good drinks centered around like prickly pear, which is a thing out here. And then you've really just got an outdoor lifestyle. Once the weather turns, right, you pretty much can just hang outside all year round. And that means like, I've never seen so many people, I've never seen so many people rollerblade. I will make the exception to say in Miami, I've also never seen as many people rollerblading as in Miami. But people are rollerblading everywhere, man. And I can't remember the last time I saw rollerblades in Baltimore. There's too many hills.
Are you a rollerblader? Can you do that?
I can. It's been a long time.
I've tried it one time. I was a good athlete, but it was never. And we'll get into the feet part of it from your background in soccer. But if my feet needed to be the star of the show, like they were on stage, I wasn't good at it. So soccer wasn't a thing. I couldn't skateboard, roller skating. I would do the truffle shuffle on ice skates. And I remember in college, me and a couple of buddies rented a house on the Jersey Shore. And my buddy got another pitcher in college with me, bigger guy. And at the time, he was probably 250. And he puts on a pair of rollerblades and he's gliding around like Wayne Gretzky. He looked like it was fluid. He looked like a ballerina it was like magnificent watching this big dude on rollerblades. And I'm thinking, shit, I can do this too. Like I'm watching my buddy Mike on the rollerblades. I could absolutely do it. So I lace him up, get onto the pavement, like go around the corner. And all of a sudden I do that thing where your feet, like a cartoon, your feet start slipping out from under you. Yep. And my feet went up in the air and I landed right on my ass, right on my coccyx. And I was in pain. I saw stars. And meanwhile, everybody else is at the house drinking beers, laughing their asses off at me. Yep. So when I hear rollerblading now, and I apologize for the quick digression there, but it brings back a lot of trauma for me going through that rollerblading experience. So you can rollerblade is what you're telling me.
Yeah, it's been, I don't know, maybe 2 decades. It wasn't like a thing we did in high school. It wasn't like a thing we did in college. Maybe as a really young kid. I remember though, down in Miami, me and a buddy, we were kind of grabbing a group of guys and hanging out down there. And we rollerbladed for, a couple hours down there, just around town. And it is an unfamiliar thing. Despite me having a lot of experience on my feet and moving a ball, putting wheels on my feet, because my feet are in soccer. What makes a good player is their balance and how well they can plant their feet. So here I'm on wheels. It's a totally different game. Not my thing. I'm learning to skateboard and ride an electric skateboard. So that's kind of my learning plateau. And maybe after that, I'll come back to rollerblade.
Yeah, just be careful with it. I don't want to be the reason why you put on rollerblades and all of a sudden you're out of commission for 2 months. All right, so I'd like to pick up with you mentioned soccer there because that was your sport growing up. You played at a high level and then you coached at a very high level as well. So bring us back to when did you start getting interested in the sport and what was it that drew you into that sport?
I played since I was like 4, really, really young. At a certain point, soccer is very cultural here. Even though it's not the loudest sport, at a young age, it is very cultural. Almost everyone plays soccer at some point in their life. At a certain point, maybe 12 or 13, I found a real passion for it. By, I'd say 13 into 14, I was relatively obsessed with it. It was my vice. It was my vehicle for commitment. It was the thing that I would do when I was stressed out or needed to be alone. It was my safety. And when you find something like that at 14, I don't know that my parents intentionally really pushed it. It was just me. I was watching World Cup games. I was, doing what I needed to do to get the newest pair of Predators, doing everything I could to get more into the game. And I continued down that path all the way through to college and beyond. And it has still a big place in my heart. I played last night and it's my favorite game. It is my favorite game for a lot of reasons. It's been a world sport. I've been able to go to other countries and like pick up a ball and immediately speak the language there. Not because I speak Spanish or anything else, but I speak football. And really young, the attraction to the game was, I think, mostly out of safety and naivety for what it would take. And by high school, it was the only thing that mattered was soccer. I played it all the time. I was often playing in leagues where they didn't speak any English. I played on a Spanish league for the better part of 6 years. And that team, that practice arena, everything that we did, I didn't even speak the language. It was still worth it in every single turn. It taught me everything about life and business and people as well.
So that's a big segue into it. Taught you everything about life, about business, and about people through a game, right? And it's a game, and we could talk a little bit about just the difference in culturally the way that the game is perceived in other countries versus in the United States of America. But you mentioned the lessons, business, and people. So pull a lesson that you learned from soccer in each one of those areas. And what's a lesson you learned about life? What's a lesson you learned about business? A lesson you learned about people from the game?
Great question. So soccer is like life in that you can always improve and there's an unlimited number of games. We tend to think of life in these finite chunks where I've got to get to this place and this destination, and sports, and in particular soccer for me, was a unfolding journey. It always changed. It always evolved. It always grew. It always challenged me. I failed. I succeeded. I won. I lost. And the theme of soccer was the umbrella for everything in my life. I could catalog every story of my life related to something that was going on in soccer. And the way I see life now is that it's all about your process. In soccer, you have to commit to a process. There's no end point. You want to keep playing for as long as possible. And it taught me the difference between a target and a goal and a process. And I'm a big believer in the process. It taught me about business by introducing me to cost benefit. I was saying no to a lot of things. I was saying no to parties and social events. I was relatively isolated and shy in high school. And I was really excited about soccer, and to like dig into my passion was something that I knew had a cost. It meant that I was saying no to a variety of things. And in entrepreneurship, that's one of the hardest things to face when most entrepreneurs start is the cost of building the business, staying out late to work versus going out with your friends. And I learned that very early. And that propelled most of entrepreneurship for me, to be able to make the trade-off between what's my future versus what's my now. And it taught me delayed gratification in the business sense. When entrepreneurs start, when creatives start, when photographers start, whoever it is that wants to start building their passion out, you have to trade instant gratification for delayed gratification. Yes. And there's nothing like sports to teach you that. You do not get good after an hour, you get good after 100 hours. So it really, really built that into my ecosystem.
I love that. And it's just the idea of like, you have to go through the suck to get to the success. You have to be willing and courageous to suck at whatever it is initially. So anyone that's listening right now, whatever it is that's in front of you, that's that challenge, being willing, being able, being courageous enough to say, I'm going to suck at whatever it is and work at it and work at it and work at it until you're bloody and sweaty and crying. Yep. And then that's when you're going to find success.
And if you're not willing to do that, you have to curb your desires. The number of people I know that want more is staggering. They want more money, more time, more energy, more love, right? It's a 4-letter word. We all want more. And most people are not willing to make the trade for the more. And sports was always a great crucible there to teach me that lesson. I want more. I want to play more. I want to do more. I want to score more. Okay, then it's time to get to work. And that is a really simple lesson, hardly developed, but a very simple lesson that translates into any kind of business operation. If you want more, it's time to go to work.
Yep.
And I wish more people could make that line of connection between a simple sporting experience, whether it's just as a young adult or it's playing kickball on a Saturday. You want more? It's time to go to work. And that is something I'm very happy to have extracted very early in my sporting career. And then people, so when I think of soccer and being able to connect to, I was in Costa Rica and played on the beach. I was in Barcelona and played in the streets. Like there were all these different connection points just from that game. But soccer teaches you about subtle nuances in the way that people play and the way you have to communicate. There's a verbal element of soccer where you're communicating outwardly. There's also a lot of nonverbals. And so you learn to read. You have to read the game, read defenders, read body language, read posture, read like hand motions. And even before I was a coach, the experience on the field taught me to pay attention and be aware. Be aware of your surroundings. Be aware of what's happening with that player. Be aware of what's going on the other side of the field. And awareness is the beginning of all transformation. It's something I tout now as an entrepreneur and a coach. It's the beginning of all transformation. So to learn to be aware really early, how am I feeling? Am I in pain? Can I keep going? Can I push further? Self-awareness is one piece of that. The other piece is what's going on around me? What's going on with my team? Did somebody make a run? Is there space up top? Is there space in the middle? Do we need to go back to go around? How do we switch the field? All of these things are about awareness. And in a group of people, to be aware of how 11 people work together, 10 others work together is no different than how do you build a business? How do you build a team? How do you get 11, 6, 20, 100 people to work together? It's the same principle. And learning to navigate, well, this player needs to be reminded to make a run politely. That person needs to be reminded aggressively. Mm-hmm. It's all the same communication pillars of how you would run a business, a company, a movement, a community, all of those things. So it taught me people at a really interesting level, all starting with awareness.
It's a big point about the differentiation in leadership. I would teach teachers about how do you teach kids the best way. And it's like, you have to think about how do you meet the kids at their level and how do you understand like by the process, the product, the way that you're communicating with the kids, like what is it that they need? It's not a cookie cutter, one size fits all mold. And as a coach, coaching men in the business world or coaching females on the soccer field, where we'll get soccer field, soccer pitch. What am I supposed to say? Is it pitch?
The pitch. Yeah. The
all
pitch.
Right. That sounds, I feel a little bit cooler if I say pitch right now. So coaching girls on the soccer pitch, things that you need to adjust slightly in your approach, because, you know, some kids need a little bit more finesse in your communication and others need a little bit more of like the kick in the ass to move them forward. And so it's really knowing the kid's baseline. So when I talk to teachers, if you're teaching, like one of the most important things is the teacher-student relationship. What's the community like? What's your rapport like with that kid? And then that's when you could get them to the next level. So now you play soccer at a high level in high school and beyond, and it's part of who you are. So talk to us about the transition from that into coaching female athletes on the soccer pitch.
So I, in no short order, went from college into a really gritty job. I graduated in 2009. It was a recession then. And I decided to fall back on a trade. My dad was an entrepreneur in the contracting demolition space, and I was just handy. I was hanging drywall at 6 and putting screws in the wall at, probably 7 and 8. And I learned a lot about how things work. So I went into apartment maintenance after college. So I was essentially doing maintenance during college to pay for my extracurriculars. And I transitioned into a property not far, maybe 20 miles from my college. So I go from college athlete, really, really good student, to a maintenance guy. And I'm like cleaning shit and fixing plumbing, and I'm not doing anything glamorous. Pulling apart washing machines and dishwashers and unclogging sinks, like not a fun job. And I had a lot of fun doing it. I was out and like in nature all the time. I wasn't at a desk. I was making decent money and had a free apartment. It was like a good living. It was just a dirty job. And I was working on a college campus for essentially off-campus college housing. So I'm like back in the mix with college students, and I've finished. I've done my time. I had a very different college experience than many as an athlete. And these kids, they only see me as the maintenance guy. They don't know my history. They don't know anything.
Right.
So I dealt with a lot of like identity challenge, like being underestimated and all that. And I got to a point where after a long breakup and some like personal challenge, I was spending time in the wrong ways. I was like, man, maybe I can go get involved with some kids and coach and like do something that's positive. Cause right now I'm treading water. So I go volunteer. A buddy of mine had just started a club, and I ended up working for them for 12 years. But I started with like, let's just go help sort of rec counsel kids, like get involved and learn to play. And at that point, it was like, these kids don't know their left foot from their right foot. They're really little. This is playful. And it eventually came up, hey, would you like to coach a boys team? So I get to a boys team, I get it moving, and a coach had essentially just made some poor choices and we needed to get rid of him. So I stepped in to take over that team. And I did that a few times from boys team to boys team. And every boys team, I'd had this electrifying speech. It was my public speaking like lesson in a lot of ways. And eventually I got to a girls team, and I gave this speech that I normally gave. And instead of this like excitement and enthusiastic roar, I got questions about how tall I was and if I had a girlfriend and where I'd come from and like what size shoe I wore, just like random questions for these 10-year-old girls. And I never went back to coaching boys. And that season was really interesting. I had never had to focus on like team chemistry the way I did with the girls team. And I would say the difference is really subtle. With boys, they'll run through a wall for you. They will, like, especially as a dude, they'll just look up to you and they will go. And with the girls, they're inquisitive. They want to understand, and they want to make sure that they're doing it for good reasons. And their chemistry together, their team culture is more important because of their natural tendency to like sort of identify and stay where it's safe. And I spent a lot of time building culture, building intentionality and connective events. And, at a certain point, I did this for like 10 years with the girls. I was like, every month or 2 weeks, 3 weeks, sometimes we would go do something that wasn't practice. We'd go play laser tag. We'd go have pizza. And it was better than a practice in some ways because it brought everyone back together. And over a long time coaching the girls, I got to take players that needed more mental fortification than physical talent building. And when I could build confidence, when I could build a really good relationship with failure, they soared as players, absolutely soared. And our team soared. And we were a very underestimated team, ranked really low, even though I don't believe in the rankings. Like we just weren't performing at a high level. The next phase of us was winning states and winning the President's Cup and winning all these tournaments that were normally out of reach. And that, in my opinion, came from building player confidence, building team culture, and running a small organization where everybody knew the direction we were going. The parents were on the same page as the players were with me. And it made for a really successful and fun career of coaching these girls up into not just successful players, but successful, strong, confident young women.
And it's so funny. I could almost see this being a movie, and either Aaron Rodgers to a degree playing you in the movie, or there's the guy that does the Citibank commercials. I don't know if you've seen that guy, or like MasterCard. It's some guy wears a blue blazer. Yeah, you have very, very similar. I got to do like a side by side there. One of those guys playing you and giving the speech to the girls, like, give 110%, get out there. We got this. You're like, let's go. Does anybody have any questions? And, Sasha's like, what's your zodiac sign? What do you order from the Chinese menu? Like, and that's hysterical. But it's a good segue into getting the community on the same page. And I wholeheartedly believe that the organization, like your unit, will function better, more productively, more efficiently when they have that community feel, when they have that buy-in to the greater good, so to speak. And with that being said, the parents are a big part of it. And having coached many years myself on many different levels, and being a parent who coaches, and then being a parent who is watching his kids be coached by other individuals, that's a huge part, is the role that the parent plays in it. We had a guy on the podcast, it's almost a year ago now. His name is Clint Lockoff, and he does a program called Athletes First. And the thing that he talks about with the kids and with the parents when he's coaching them is, listen, one of the biggest things is the drive home after the game. And I remember the drive home after the game, and it's something that you address in your book too. The drive home after the game was either like I was elated because I did really well, or I was in tears because I'm getting ripped a new one by my dad, who's pissed off that I struck out 3 times with bases loaded, right? So those are the things. It's really important for parents to learn a couple lessons about, parenting their kids as their athletes. So if I'm a parent listening to this right now, and you could give me a piece or two of advice to pull from the book, we don't want to give them all away, because we'll definitely, people have to check that book out. It's absolutely tremendous. What's a piece or two of advice that you would give?
I'll frame this the politically correct way, and then I'll give you the hammer.
Oh yeah, the down and dirty.
It is not about you. It is not about you looking good. It is not about you feeling like you've won, like the team is successful and your kid is a superstar. It has nothing to do with you. And the more you believe and make it about the way you feel, the harder it is on your kid. And in most cases, if you are on a strong team with a good coach, get the shit together for you to get out of the way, because more than likely you're in the way. What I dealt with a lot, and I know a lot of coaches do, is looking at a player and their possible development, their potential, and watching a parent directly step in the line and derailing that line of progression. So that might be an issue with playtime, when playtime needs to be earned. I'm not saying that coaches shouldn't talk about it, but there's often like a demand for it. It might be when it comes to how a player is developing or what position they fall into, that we take a very short-sighted approach, and the long game is not played. And most of that has to do with me and me as a parent wanting something different, or expecting something different, or even worse, thinking that because of who I am at the job, in my life, because I'm the winner, because I'm the champ, because I'm the CEO, that kid's entitled. And that derails progression for a kid really fast, and distinctly robs them of the biggest lessons they'll get. It threads through so many different sports too. It's not just soccer. That book, Let Her Play, is not about soccer. It's about sports in general. If you can get your shit together and say, hey, my son's performance, my daughter's performance is about them. I'm here to support them. I'm here to be number 2 in this story, not number 1. The entire rhetoric about like chastising them in the car, or beating them up after practice, or saying, I'm going to send you to this event like we're in charge of their life, makes it a lot more contextualized to, well, wait a minute, do you want to go do more? Do you want to learn more? What are you excited about? What are you passionate about? And I think the 5th chapter in the book is about asking good questions so that we get the answers from our young adults, rather than try to instill them ourselves like we know the answers. And the same could be said in education, right? Good teachers bring out the best and the passion of a student. We don't install it. It's not a software program that we put into a CD-ROM drive. It's not a download that we put into a hard drive. Most parents want the outcome for them. And the best parents I had would constantly come up and say, how is she doing? And what can I do to support what you're working on with her? Wildly different. They were prepared to be number 2. And the ones with the egos, they were the loudest ones on the sideline. They were the loudest ones after the game. They were the loudest ones in my inbox. They were loud, and they wanted to get their way. And they didn't realize it wasn't about them.
Building men of character, integrity, strength, compassion, and empathy through transformational mentoring, coaching, and motivational speaking is our mission here at Building Men. To work with me as a one-on-one life coach, you can find information in the show notes, or you can visit our website at buildingmen.io, where you can book a free 30-minute discovery call to help you become the strongest version of yourself mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. Now, back to the show.
I would use the analogy Q-tip, quit taking it personally for educators, but also for parents. And to your point, I think what a lot of parents need to do is get out of their own way. Like what's the motivation behind whatever you're doing right now? Is it truly for your kid to find success? And if it really is that, then back off, settle down, sit down, because otherwise you're making a spectacle of yourself. And guaranteed that for the kid that's on the field, if the father's running up and down the sidelines yelling and screaming, they want to dig a hole and hide. It's such a detriment to the kid. And for me, my soccer career, it lasted, I think, 2 years. I was on the Shamrocks and the Adams were the two teams that I was on, like 5 and 6 years old. And I spent my time wiggling my teeth as I had loose teeth, and I was trying to find 4-leaf clovers in the grass. I was picking the grass. That was my experience in soccer. I'm glad for me, during that time, my father was not the dad who was running up and down with a 5 and 6 year old on the soccer field, but it did happen in baseball, basketball, and football. He was that guy. A lot of times he was coaching my team, and he was that guy. So it definitely resonates with me on a couple of different levels. So the book, Let Her Play. Talk to us about just the process of writing the book. It's always interesting to me as authors go through that process. Obviously, you had many years of coaching. During the time that you were coaching, where you're like, wow, there's a lot of stuff here that I'm learning about coaching female athletes that I could put together in a succinct way? Or did the idea just be, did it come to you one morning, you woke up, you're like, all right, I'm writing a book today?
Definitely not wake up and write a book. I had met a couple of really awesome athletes that had really unique stories, both of which are in the book. One dealt with an injury that dramatically changed the way her arm and shoulder functioned and the way it developed. The other was allergic to like everything except for 30 foods, which doesn't seem like a few amount, but that's very limiting when it comes to food. Allergic to grass, allergic to all this stuff. So I learned about these two athletes, and I was going to write a book called Play Like a Girl. And I was going to tell the story of what it looked like to face adversity and still play, and what it meant to play like a girl in a positive way. And about maybe a year and a half into writing, I was just kind of writing casually. I wasn't very serious with it. A book comes out called Play Like a Girl. And I'm like, oh my God, damn it. The ship has sailed. And maybe 3 or 4 months later, I was on the sideline, and a girl came off the field. I subbed her out because she was crying. And I remember her coming off the field, and I kind of gave her a hug and was like, hey, what's going on? Like, I've never seen you cry. Like, are you okay? So we kind of sat her down, calmed her down. And she was like, my dad is yelling at me on the sideline. And I had never really put words to what I was trying to express at the end of the game. And I ended up putting her back in on the opposite side, which meant that she had to play like right wing the first half and then left wing the second half. And it just made for a very awkward experience for me. And after the game, I had this like really hard emotion of like, I don't want to confront this, like, but I have to confront this. Like, this is wildly unhealthy. So I went up to the dad and I was like, look, I need to talk to you. And now's probably not the right time to talk about it, but I don't think there's going to be another better time. So we're going to talk about this right now. Can we step over here? And the arc of that conversation was like, I need you to recognize that something you're doing is making her uncomfortable. To have a player come off the sideline and like need a hug in the middle of the game crying is not okay. It's just not okay. And I want you to think about what the outcome is for you. What is it that you're trying to get? Are you trying to get her to perform better? If that's the case, it's not working. Are you trying to get her to feel safe, feel comfortable? Not working. Are you trying to get her to connect with you and communicate with you? also not working. None of these things are going to happen as a parent to a daughter. If this is your method, where do you want to go? And we had a very difficult conversation. And the whole arc of that conversation, the whole message that I had, and I'm very proud of how emotionally like consistent I was during that dialogue. The whole arc was, can you let her play? Can you just let her play? Let her fail, let her make mistakes, let her miss the shot, let her win, let her dominate, let her have a great match. And can you just let it happen instead of trying to like hold on to these tethers of false control? Can you just let the shit go, man? Get up, go do something else. What do you need to do with your Sunday to make you feel better and maybe more prepared to show up? Because right now, you're not showing up. You're not showing up as a dad. You're not showing up as a leader. You're showing up as a like controlling peon that wants to like fight his way onto the field that you're not welcome on. This is not a game for you. This is a game for her. And it ignited this passion to rewrite the whole book from a lens, not of, let me tell a story of these girls and how brave they're being. Let me instead assess what coaches and parents are completely missing in this obvious race to get somewhere that you can't control. I can't create college athletes. They have to create themselves into a college athlete. I can foster, I can support, but you cannot. I know this as a coach from athletics and from entrepreneurs. If they do not want to do the work, it doesn't matter how bad I want it for them. And then all of a sudden I spent the next like probably 9 months writing furiously. And I got crippled by, it was February 2020. It was probably like the 12th, 13th of the month. I had a friend that flew into Baltimore. I met him and I was crippled by fear of publishing this book. I'm not a dad and I'm not a woman. How the hell am I going to write a book on coaching either of these parties? Coaching parents, coaching coaches, coaching girls. Like, I got no authority here. And I met with this guy, his name was Kevin Snyder. I'm eternally grateful for him. And he was like, I'm going to connect you with my publisher. You're writing this book and I will help you go speak on it. I will help you go share on it. We're going to figure this out, but you got to publish the book first. So I talked to a publisher the next day and I was like, listen, I know this is a crazy request. I have done all the work. I've edited the book. I've had it reviewed. I've had parents already go through it and give me feedback. I'm terrified to publish it. This needs to publish on Leap Day, February 29th, 2020. It's Leap Day. I'm taking this leap. And the woman, her name was Lee. She was like, oh my God, you got to be kidding me. Like, that's like 15 days from now. There's no fucking way we can do this. And we had it done and it published February 29th, 2020. And like, we can talk about what it did. It's gotten amazing reviews from an amazing community that adopted it. It hit Amazon #1 new release. It did all these really cool things. And shit, like 30 days later, the world shut down. So all of the hope of like speaking and touring, youth soccer, youth sports was over.
Yep.
And I had to be okay with the book published. This is my homage. I ended up retiring during the like first half of that pandemic. So I retired from the game. And that was my thank you banner to everything the sport has taught me, in hopes that parents and coaches could glean something from 12 years of very intentional learning and conversations so that they could do it better than I did.
And it is. I highly recommend the book to anyone who's interested. And it's interesting too, because the book let her play it, the idea of coaching female athletes, which is what you did. But now you're actually in the process of writing another book that focuses on the young men. So in that process of doing the research and getting, all your ducks in a line with that, what's the biggest difference that you have recognized, or one or two differences about the difference of coaching young female athletes versus young male athletes?
I would say what the female athlete typically needed was confidence to match their competency. They needed that relationship between what do I expect to happen and then how do I build this? And when I could help a young female athlete build confidence, they could almost self-manage. They were just much better at that. With the boys, what I found is that regulating emotion is a big one, and buying into the team. with the girls, the teamwork became a bit more simple to implement, because even when you play at a high level, the game is a different game. It's not nearly as quick and athletically oriented at a certain point. But with the boys, why teamwork and leadership and why emotions are important are critical elements to their future. And when I think about what a young man needs to really understand, leading, emotion, and teamwork are three things that stand out for the rest of their lives, like fully the rest of their lives. And there's some nuance between the two groups, but generally boys, we don't know how to regulate emotions. I just figured that out like 2 or 3 days ago. So it's a deeper strain, confidence being one and regulating emotion on the other, or talking about emotion. But it's the same door. If you walk through that door, you become a different player. What happened with boys is that if they weren't winning, they weren't managing well. And this is true with men I know now. If they're not winning, they're not doing well. They're like, I don't care about this. I don't care. Fuck it. I don't want it. Nope. I don't want to do it. Nope. Can't win. So I don't want to play. And that attitude starts with, how are you feeling? What's going on under the surface? Can you manage that? And if you're angry, how do you manage? If you're upset, sad, how do you manage? If you're excited, how do you manage so that when you come into the game, you're at a level plane? We need warriors that no matter what's happening on the field, they're calm. And that's a skill that's necessary for the world today, because any kind of like flagrant foul in the real world has major consequences. And if men can learn young to regulate those things, they stand a much better chance of being successful in any profession.
Absolutely agree with that. And it's interesting too, the regulation of emotion. I remember it, like, it brings me back to playing sports growing up. You needed to take this, the stress that you're feeling before the event that comes up, and when you think about stress, it goes all the way from like very mild stress through toxic stress. And the mild stress is like before you go up to give a speech, before the big game. And like, how do you take those butterflies in your stomach and make it into productive performance on whatever court field you choose? A lot of young men take that stress and it turns into anger. And then when the anger becomes overwhelming, then they shut down. So it's like, how do you harness that and help them deal with whatever the emotion they're feeling and get them to that calm state to regulate before they go out onto the field? When you see the best athletes in the world performing at a high level, they're not like yelling and screaming unless it's after the play when they've just been successful. They're typically, their emotions are regulated. Their breathing is in a normal range, right? And so that's what we have to help young men get to that point. So then take that and tell us the ideas about coaching young females, coaching young men and soccer. And what you do also is you help men or people in the business world. So when you're coaching someone, or typically when you're coaching either a group of people or even, in an individual coaching capacity, what's one or two things that you're seeing out there that are getting in people's way of being successful in the business world?
They're almost the same things. My transition from coaching athletes to coaching entrepreneurs and coaching leaders happened they were concurrent pathways for me. I was starting to coach entrepreneurs way back in, this would be like 2015, 2016. The most entrepreneurs are fixated on an outcome. They don't believe in a process. We talked about this earlier. Like, as a soccer player, I was committed to working out for an hour every day, every single day. Not because I got an outcome, not because I did it better, not because I won, because that's the process by which you consistently evolve. And many entrepreneurs fail, in my opinion, because they lack the long game in their mindset. They're simply transactional. They're looking for the win. And so they either go where it's easy or they go where it's known. And entrepreneurship does not function or serve when you stick to what you know. It is all an unknown game. So most credibly, entrepreneurs need to understand the process by which they become the person they want to become or build the business they want to build, rather than fixate on an outcome. The other really simple analogy that I think I struggle to communicate very effectively and have gotten way better at over the last 3 years is that entrepreneurship is not a game of money. Entrepreneurship is a game of reinvestment and growth. that doesn't necessarily mean money. And when we get into entrepreneurship, we have a natural focal point of money. I need to make more money than my job, or I need to bring in money for the business. And we forget that we're the earning device now. In the job, we don't have to be the earning device. We're just the asset that produces the reports or manages the customers, et cetera. In entrepreneurship, you're the asset. You have to be the asset. And if you don't add to your asset, your limit is very fixed. And as an athlete, you're the asset. People pay you to be the asset, to go score goals, to go defend. And that mentality is what keeps a lot of players stuck and keeps a lot of entrepreneurs stuck. If you're the asset, you have to get better. You have to get better skills. You have to keep learning. You have to break old patterns. You have to unlearn old shit. And what I see with a lot of entrepreneurs, and have gotten a lot better at building for people, is the pathway to unlearning and learning. And if you can do that with high integrity to what you want to become, you're limitless. But many people fail to recognize that they're the earning device of their future. And if you don't have a good relationship with money, if you don't have a good relationship with yourself, that is the first place to start. The same as it would be in athletics.
Right. Yeah, I appreciate that. It's a good way to segue from what you were doing with young men and women on the coaching in the coaching environment to what you're doing right now. And it's the process. And I think that's such an important thing for people to understand is it's in society right now, it's immediate gratification. It's like, what can I get right in my fingertips right now? But you need to go through, like, if I'm going to learn how to freaking rollerblade, I need to start with having a walker in front of me with the rollerblades on and recognizing that it might take me 100 days to get to the point where I could glide down the street with any level of confidence. Yep. So a couple of things that you've gone through, you mentioned growing up, soccer was your thing. Go to college. After you graduate, now you're in a spot where you're as a maintenance man, and it must have been a bit of an identity shift there for you as well. And it's something that could resonate with. My father's a blue collar worker. And I remember when I started teaching, my summers were spent painting with him. And I just remember the way that people would treat me if I had a shirt and tie on going into my job as an educator versus I'm wearing painting clothes and I'm, have white paint all over my body and I go into 7-Eleven, just the way that people would look at me was vastly different. So there was always that identity shift that I went through as well. And it helped me understand how to treat human beings. It was really a remarkable thing. I'm sure you went through something similar during that time as well, right, Aaron?
Oh man. I, especially as like a young, just out of college, basically former college student that just ported my way back into college dorms wearing a blue jumpsuit. Yeah, I struggled immensely trying to figure out what value I had when I was spoken to the way I was. There were certainly individuals that treated me very well and could listen and had some emotional intelligence to say like, hey man, what's your story? And yet I definitely struggled. And that struggle is not only for someone that feels they're undervalued, that's also for someone that's going through a major life transition or has stepped into big responsibility that they've never dealt with before. It's really common. But I definitely, man, I grappled hard with that one.
Oh, absolutely. And it's one of those things where, and you want to put up your fists when there's guys like, yeah, go clean it up, garbage man. And you're like, son of a bitch, you have no fucking clue, right? You have to, have that self-talk, like, okay, it's not about this situation here. So now what I'd love to know, like you've gone through these different processes and each one of these hurdles you've jumped over in the course of your life, you've taken and extrapolated life lessons from them. So from soccer player to doing the maintenance thing, to coaching, to writing a book, to be, coaching entrepreneurs, the CEO of the Money Club, and your newest venture in your life is being a dad. So what's a lesson you've learned over the past couple months of your life since your son EQ has been born? Tell us a little bit about that.
Man, it's a really interesting transition in this case because being a dad is forever. And I struggle with that to start. I really grappled, as an entrepreneur, you certainly pretend like I'm going to build this business, I'm going to do it forever. But there's iterations and changes and your role changes and all that. This is a permanent role. This is I've been appointed.
Yeah.
And, you know, in some ways, this early stage of being a dad is hard because I have little I can add right now. I can't teach or train. I can't impart wisdom yet. I can be present and I can work very diligently on that. And that's certainly a lesson in itself. But this has also been probably, if I extracted what it is, this is probably the first time in my life where the best thing I can do is very, very little. I just need to hold him. That's it. I don't need anything fancy. I don't need to prove my worth. I don't need to have fancy things. And like I've worked very hard to have a really good life. I have a great life and I'm so grateful for that and so proud of that. And like, that doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter to him. All I need to do is just sit there with him and that's enough. And it has forced me to really confront the question, what is enough? And I don't know the answer to that. We all have our own answer, but that is a deep fucking question of prioritization. What's essential? What matters? What do you stand for? And when we play the money game and play the entrepreneurship game, where the goal is to have more and do more and be more, that question is a quick catalyst to different answers, very different answers.
During the course of this interview, you gave so many great one-liners. What is enough is one of my favorite ones. And it speaks to just the value that you're adding, not only to the soccer players that you coach, the people that you're coaching in business, but just to people that you connect with. And bring it back to the beginning of the interview about networking and adding value. You have certainly done that to anyone who is listening right now. It's been a tremendous amount of value added, whether you're a parent, whether you are a young man or woman listening to this that's involved in athletics, whether you are a businessman or woman, like you could not help but get value from the last hour with my man Aaron here. So my final question always, Aaron, is if someone's listening to this episode right now, you provided a tremendous amount of value to them already. But if I am listening right now and I hit pause on this episode, and there's one thing that I can do to change the trajectory of my life, one thing right now that I could start doing immediately that will absolutely make a ripple effect of impact in my future, what's that one thing that I could do?
The action step, I would say, detached from any self-promotion, is ask yourself this question: what do I want more of? And if you don't know the answer, there's your work. If you know the answer and you don't know how to get there, there's your work. When we're clear on what we want more of, clarity is a big part of growth. If you don't know the answer of what you want more of, most people say time. I want more freedom. But what does that mean? It's super abstract. Tell me what you want, man. You want to play golf 3 times a week? What is it? If you are unclear on what you want more of, you have work to do. And my job is to help people get more of both income and time and help them build an intentional life. That's in my private coaching. And then for a business, I do a lot of work with team building and helping the team get more production, clear, direct, mission oriented. Both of those things are there's the same question. And most of us could tell us all the shit we don't want. I don't want to spend my Saturdays taking care of my mom. I don't want to be forced to live in this city. I don't want to have to work on Sundays. I don't want to have to work overtime. We can tell what we don't want. Very few of us can say, here is with specificity exactly what I want. And that's a really important piece. And you don't need me for the inquisition. I'm here to help people that want to take it very seriously and invest in going forward faster, further. But the question is still a fundamental question to getting the thing that you want very, very fast. If you don't know the answer, start with that question.
It's an awesome point. The people that I work with, that typically, if that question is asked, you hear money, time, and magic, like something like larger than themselves to inspire. But then the follow-up question is, okay, what does that look like, sound like, feel like? Like, let's dive deeper into it. What does more time look like to you? Like, let's be like, peel back the layers on that. So you're absolutely right. And I would totally agree with that. So where can the Building Men audience find you, Aaron? How do we get in touch with you?
Best place to go, my website or Instagram. My name, Aaron Velky, AARON, V as in victory, ELKY. So AaronVelky.com, Aaron Velky on Instagram, Aaron Velky on Facebook. Just find me that way. Google it. Whatever you can do to find my name in any platform, it's relatively easy. Thank you for a unique name, Mom and Dad. find me there. You can reach out. I've got ways you can book a discovery call, ways you can reach out and ask a question. There's plenty of ways you can send me a DM or a message. I like to be accessible, and for as long as I can, we'll maintain that. I read and pay attention to everything that comes in. So send me a note. Easy.
Awesome. And if first person that sends me an email at buildingmencoach@gmail.com with the subject, "What is enough?" I will send you a copy of Let Her Play, my treat. Aaron Velky, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast, my man. I really appreciate just our friendship and the connection and everything you've done, one, to add value to my life and other people that have listened to this podcast. To find Building Men, most common places on Instagram, building.men. Our website is buildingmen.io. Thank you to our sponsors, Finish the Race Apparel, ftrapparel.com, and Become Stronger Industries. And our new sponsor, Chop Club for Men with Dave Robinson. We'll put all the information. That's online men's coaching group, and find our young men's virtual coaching, the foundation for middle and high school young men, on our website. Go one step further than you thought you could go. We'll see you next time on Building Men.